Hey everyone, Mr. Montgomery again, and today we are starting a brand new unit all about habitats and environments and population density and essentially just living things in general. So we're going to be starting our whole brand new section on science. We are no longer doing physics, and we're moving on to biology and life sciences. So today we're really going to focus on the living things and their different environments. Ooh, and we're also going to be going into categorization of animal populations and that kind of stuff. So, and right here, I'm just letting you guys know what we're going to be doing. This is my goal for you. Be able to explain the factors that create each ecosystem and habitat. And now, if you have access to the Google Slides, I would recommend you clicking on here for a nice quick laugh. But we don't really have time for that in this video. But if you have access to this, definitely go check that out. Okay, so what in the habitat is going on? The entire Earth is covered in different environmental spaces we call habitats. Each habitat has different types of living things we call organisms. Sorry. So just remember, an organism is any living thing. That could be a plant, an animal, a parasite, a worm, you. Every living thing is an organism. Okay, so just don't forget that one simple fact. Okay, each type of habitat provides food, water, shelter, so that its organisms can live and grow and reproduce and have families and babies and keep on living. So if a habitat were to run out of any of these things, run out of food, water, or shelter, then that organism or species would move on to a different environment in order to find a proper living space. Okay, all organisms interact with the living things and non-living things in their habitat. Living environmental parts are called biotic factors. So these bugs are biotic factors. And that also goes for anything that is a process of a living thing, such as drinking, eating, hunting, all these things. They're also biotic factors. But this waterfall is non-living, so it is not a biotic factor. Okay, so although drinking water would be a biotic process, right, a biotic factor itself, the water all alone, not being involved in anything right now, is not a biotic factor. So some great examples of other biotic factors are going to be plants, seeds, berries, bugs, anything that can grow or reproduce or be used as food, or any of that stuff. I mean, because if you think about berries, not only is that part of a biotic process where animals are going to feed on it in order to live, but it's also part of a plant. So they have two different kinds of or two aspects of a biotic factor, right? Because it's a living thing, but it's also food. Same thing with any plants. It's a living thing, and also sometimes it can be food. Bugs, it is a living thing, and guess what? For some things, they are still food. But now let's talk about the flip side. I feel like you guys have a good idea on biotic factors. I feel like it's pretty easy. Oh, and also a quick little tidbit. Bio always means living, so biotic, it's living factors. That's it. So if you, just in case you ever forget, whenever you see bio, it means life or living. So like biology, right? Bio is living, and ology is the study of, or logy, I mean, is the study of. So study of living things. Now let's talk about these non-biotic factors, or as we are going to call them, abiotic factors. Now, if you don't pronounce the same as me, I'm not going to care. It's not that big of a deal. If you want to say abiotic or abiotic, however you like to pronounce it, you know what? That's fine by me. As long as you know how to write that word and you understand what it means, I'm okay with that. So it's just factors within the environment that are not living, like rocks and water and soil, right? Temperature. We can't forget about things like temperature, the atmosphere, how damp the atmosphere is. These are all abiotic factors that, even though they're not living, they still have an impact on the environment and the living things within that environment. Okay, so here's some more examples, and I'm pretty sure I hit most of them. There's one or two I forgot. So some great examples of abiotic factors are going to be, let's see, water, sunlight, oxygen, temperature. These are all factors that organisms depend on that are not living. So let's talk about weather for a second, right? If you are a lizard, you're a cold-blooded lizard, right? You need tons of super intense direct sunlight to stay warm. That's why lizards live in the desert. The cold-blooded, they need lots of heat to stay warm and live. If their environment gets way too cold, well, guess what? They're not going to be living anymore because they're cold-blooded. They need hot things. Without the hot environment, they either A, need to find a better place for them to live before they are no longer living, or B, the worst case scenario, they're no longer going to be living. Now, each abiotic factor plays a crucial role within each environment. For example, without water, you're not going to have any living things in that environment, unless you're a type of organism that doesn't need much water. Also, oxygen, right? That's crucial. Everything uses oxygen. Plants use oxygen. We use oxygen. Every other animal uses oxygen. And guess what? Even water has oxygen in it too. Oxygen is massively important. So just because it's not a living thing doesn't mean it's not absolutely essential for life. All right, let's check in real quick, guys. What is a biotic factor? Is it going to be non-living things, gases, living things, or habitat temperatures? Which answer do you think is the best one? And the correct answer is living things. So whenever you see just bio at the beginning, nothing else, then it's going to always mean living. Now, water, we're going to be going into, excuse me, some various abiotic factors and talk about why they're so stinking important. Like water, for example, it's an abiotic factor that all living things depend on to carry on their life processes. Because guess what, guys? Our bodies are like, what, 75% water, roughly? And we need at least 1 liter of water to live each day. And now, if you're watching this video and you're saying, Mr. Montgomery, I don't drink a whole liter of water a day, so ha! Well, also think about the other stuff you're consuming, okay? If you're having lots of fruit, guess what? There's water in fruit. If you're drinking juice, guess what? There's water in juice too. If you're drinking soda, there is some water in soda, even though soda is not very healthy. And then also if you're consuming other types of foods like soups and stuff like that, popsicles, guess what? Soup is a lot of water, and popsicles, it's frozen water or frozen juice. So you guys are probably consuming much more liquid than you realize you are. So another reason why water is so important, it helps plants and algae thrive by assisting with photosynthesis. Photosynthesis allows plants to produce their own food using sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water in order to recycle the carbon dioxide and produce oxygen. Now, the cool thing is they're taking in this carbon dioxide, they are processing it by using sunlight and water, and as they're using the carbon dioxide to manipulate it and turn it into an energy source for itself, the byproduct, meaning whatever's left over, is just a single oxygen molecule that it kind of spits out. It's kind of like if you were to chew a steak, right? You take a nice big bite of steak and you're eating that steak and you're like, oh my God, this is so good. Oh, it's nourishing. But then the worst thing happens. You get this huge, gross chunk of fat, right? And let's be honest, we don't like eating the fat on the steak. It's chewy, it's yucky. Ugh, get it away from me. And it would be like if we were to constantly eat steak and spit out the fat over and over and over. That would be our byproduct of eating steak. For plants, they're taking in the carbon dioxide, they're recycling it, and they're spitting out oxygen as the byproduct because it doesn't need it. So it throws it out, and then we can consume it and keep thriving and living. Now, before you say, well, plants are just the greatest thing in the world, they are. I'm not arguing that. But, fun fact for you guys, in case I didn't tell you already, or in case you're not in my class and you somehow found this video and God knows why you're watching it, but I hope you're enjoying it. Even though plants make oxygen for us, they're not super efficient. So with all the trees that we have and plants we have in the world, it's only about 1% efficient at producing oxygen. All right, so after plants thrive in an environment, they are then used as food for other organisms. We actually mentioned this earlier. We know that plants can be food, and that's why they are biotic factors. But just remember, it's in the abiotic thing portion of this lesson, because if we backtrack, remember this is all just circling from water, okay? So I don't want you guys going through this thinking, well, plants are an abiotic factor. No. They are using an abiotic factor, water, in order to thrive. It's all one long example showing why water is so important, okay? So I don't want anyone getting confused by that. Now, sunlight, our next abiotic factor. Sunlight is crucial for plants to perform photosynthesis. Without sunlight, no plants can grow. This is absolutely correct. And the really cool thing about plants and sunlight is that they will always move where there is more sunlight. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, you're psychotic by saying plants are moving because they stay in one spot in the ground at all times, right? Yes, that part is correct. But as they grow towards where there is more sunlight. Or if you were to actually look at a video of sunflowers in fast forward, right? If you were to fast forward a video of sunflowers throughout an entire day, you would see them rotating along with the sun because they want to absorb as much sunlight as possible, and that's how they do it. Now, oxygen, one of the most crucial things ever. Oxygen is necessary for all organisms to live in any environment. There is nothing that can live without oxygen, except for, I think there is one microorganism that they recently found that can survive, but it's literally the only thing. Everything else in the world, on Earth, needs oxygen to live, whether it's fish. Yes, I said fish. Fish actually take in oxygen through water. They break it in through their gills. They extract it, and they do use oxygen. And then every mammal uses oxygen. Every amphibian uses oxygen. Every reptile. They all breathe. So animals that live on land obtain their oxygen through the air, right? We breathe in through our lungs. We inhale. And then our lungs inflate. They blow up like balloons. And then all these little tiny balloons inside, they also inflate. And they have these little silica hairs on top of each one that help extract as much oxygen out of the atmosphere that we're breathing in as possible. So then animals that live in the water obtain their oxygen from the water that surrounds them itself through their gills. And I actually just got done explaining this, so I'm not going to go through it again because that would be crazy. And temperature, we were talking about this a little bit ago, right? Temperature is a factor that can help determine what kind of organism can be found in that specific environment. So, like I said before, if you have a super hot, sandy desert environment, well, guess what, guys? You're going to find a lot of lizards and reptiles out there, like snakes and stuff. And also other kinds of organisms, such as scorpions and spiders that might not, that can survive that intense heat, maybe can go a little bit longer without without water and stuff like that, and can survive this very harsh environment. Now, if we were going to go to the tundra, the Arctic tundra, you're not going to find any lizards. They can't survive there. They're cold-blooded. They need a lot of heat to survive. But over here, you're going to find stuff like, I don't know, penguins, seals, polar bears, Arctic foxes, and some other really cool organisms and species of animals that you wouldn't find elsewhere. Ooh, soil. Soil is so important, and we don't even realize it. Soil Soils are mixtures of rock, fragments, natural nutrients, water, air, and remains of decaying plants and animals. And remains of decaying plants and animals, you guys know exactly where I want to go with this. Fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are embedded deep in the soil, right? We learned about that stuff already. And then the type of soil influences what type of plants will grow, because every kind of plant needs a different kind of soil. Some need a very dense soil that really retains water well, and other kinds of plants, such as in this picture over here in this desert, this soil is more dusty. It's just like this, dirt that's not very nutrient rich, because these plants don't need as much nutrients, they don't need as much water. It's not as plentiful, but these plants are able to survive that harsh environment, just like the reptiles. Okay, so depending on what kind of soil you have will help you determine what kind of plants you're going to be able to grow. So in New Jersey, when the settlers first got to the coast, or the East Coast, whether they landed in Jersey or Connecticut or Maine, think about where they landed. They landed on a beach. And the crazy thing was, a lot of these people didn't really know how to farm very well, because they were escaping persecution from another country. So when they first got here, they were actually trying to farm in very sandy soil, which wasn't very good, and they couldn't grow things. But luckily, the Native Americans came in, they swooped in, saved the day, and they kind of showed the Pilgrims how to survive this different environment that they're not exactly used to. Because over in the UK, where a lot of these people came from, well, they don't really have beaches over there. They have a lot of cliffs and rocks and very nutrient-rich soil. So it's very easy to grow things over there compared to the United States. But after they learned that you can't use sand to grow stuff very well, you need to kind of move more inland where there's more nutrient-rich soil, unless you know some other little tips and tricks. I believe one of them was using dead fish along with this, planting it with the seeds in the soil, and it actually helped provide nutrients. Crazy, I know. So and I reread that part. What am I doing? Let's move on. Oh yes, I forgot about this one. So let's do a little check-in. I know you guys can't draw on the screen, and please don't get a marker and draw on your Chromebook. That would not be very good. Okay, don't do that. Don't. But I want you to point to every single picture on the screen that is an abiotic factor. Okay? We have berries, soil, sunlight, bugs, and temperature. I'll give you guys a couple seconds, and then I'm going to draw the answers and see if you were able to match up with mine. All right, give you a few more seconds. All right, let's see how you did. Berries are biotic, right? Because they are living things. They're part of a plant. They're used for life processes. So I can't circle that. Soil, we did just talk about that, so that's circled. Bugs, no, they're living things. So they are biotic factors. And sunlight, yep, that is an abiotic factor. It's not living, but is absolutely essential for things to thrive in any environment. And then temperature is also an abiotic factor. It is very much needed for life to thrive in any environment, but of course it is not a living thing or involved in living processes. Okay, and within different habitats, they will all contain different species. So from here on, we're going to be going into organism organization. So we already learned that everything that's living is an organism, right? But within that, we have species, which is a very specific kind of animal. So, for example, we have tigers and we have a cheetah on this front. Oh, and a lion, right? We have a lion, a tiger, and a cheetah. They are all animals. They are all organisms. They're all within the same cat family, but they are different species within that cat family. And we're going to dive deeper into that as we go further down. But don't worry, as we go through this, all these new units in life sciences, we are going to be talking about the order of the animal kingdom, which is kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. And I know what you're thinking, Mr. Montgomery, you only know all that because you have it written down, but I don't. I actually memorized that for the last 25 years from from 8th grade. But let's continue. So a species is a group of an organism that are physically familiar and can mate with each other. Meaning, a cheetah, a female cheetah, and a male cheetah, right? They're the same species. They can have babies, they can mate, they can have a family. A lion and a lion, of course, as long as they're male and female, they can mate, they can reproduce and have a family. But a lion and a cheetah, even though they're both cats, they're both within the cat family, they're not the same species and they're not able to mate. Now, I know what you guys are going to be saying because some of my students said already, well, what about a lion and a tiger? I've seen one. They're real. Or there's also another great example of cross-species reproduction, which is a mule, which is a crossbreed between a donkey and a horse. But the thing is about this stuff, guys, is that nature always has a way of sorting things out. And what I mean by that is a liger, if a lion and a tiger were to mate and make a liger, they have an incredibly short lifespan, and they're going to have a lot of health difficulties. They're not going to be able to reproduce. And then for a mule, if a horse and a donkey were to mate and have a mule, well, in this special scenario, a mule is actually sterile. It's not going to be able to reproduce at all. And that is also one of nature's ways of help sorting things out to keep species within the same species, if that makes sense. And that's it. If you guys have any other questions about this, please bring it up in class, and I'll be more than happy to answer it. Oh, and before I continue, the main reason why all this happens is because your genome, every organism has a different genome, which is the DNA of that species. And the DNA is always so vastly different that the sex cells, meaning the sperm and the egg, will not be able to combine and pair up all the chromosomes properly. Okay, so when we have one species in a particular area, we call this a population. For example, the current human population in the United States is approximately 336 million. And over here I have a population density map, which if you haven't seen it, it's always very interesting to check out. So this population density map shows that all the white areas are the very low populated areas, and as they get darker and darker into like an orange, it's more populated. As it gets to red, it's even more populated. And if there's any part on here that has black, that is super populated. And there is a couple spots in here that are black. One of them being, well, would you look at this? It's right at New Jersey, right at the top of New Jersey, right there. We are one of the most heavily populated states in the entire United States of America. So areas will always have more than one species. Okay, you're not going to go to Africa and see only zebras, or go to Africa and see only lions, or go to, I don't know, Nebraska and see just bison out there, right? You're going to see multiple species interacting with one another all the time. So when all different species live in the same area, we call this a community. Okay, so if you were to have all of the same species, or all the same animal, I mean, that's a species. And then when you have more than one species together, that is a community. You guys are always told that you live in a community. And a lot of times in social studies, they always narrow in on, what the jobs are and what places you can go, and they call that a community. But in science, we call community any organism that lives with other organisms. That's it. So we have a community where we live with dogs and cats and squirrels and snakes and chipmunks and all these other animals you can think of. So when organisms within a community consistently interact with the non-living parts of the environment, this then creates an ecosystem. And I know this is kind of getting a little dense, guys. It's just going to take a little bit of rehearsal, and I promise you will remember this. Don't worry too much. So when you have all these living and non-living things interact, that's when you finally have the ecosystem. So remember that an ecosystem has to involve the water, the soil, the temperature, the people, the fish, everything. And then lastly, I thought this was just super cool. Did you guys know that there's scientists that actually go out and evaluate and observe all these different things? It may sound kind of made up and far-fetched, but it's true. So not only do we have biologists, chemists, and neurologists, and all these other kind of fancy scientific fields, we also have another one called ecology, where the scientists study how living things act with one another, and and this is just the study of all living things within an ecosystem. And that's what ecologists do. They constantly go into different areas to see if there's maybe a new species or if there are a change in the amount of species in that area. They're going to look into why that happened. Is there something wrong with the water? Is there less food? Is there an overpopulation issue? Is there an underpopulation issue with a different species? There's a lot of different factors, and they have to go in and try to figure out why this happens. So if you really enjoy being outdoors, animals, and trying to figure out puzzles, this is a job you're really going to enjoy. But that's going to be it for today, guys. Sorry if the lesson was a little long. Unfortunately, these lessons in this unit are just a tad longer. It's a lot of information to get through. But don't worry, we're going to get through it. If you have any questions, make sure you ask me in person if needed, or if you're not in my class, make sure you ask your teacher if you're confused about anything. But I'm hoping that this video helps you guys as always. So I'll see you guys next time, and I hope you have a great day. See you later.